This morning we're going to look at the contemplation of the elements. We're doing a practice called Satipatthana, and we'll talk much more about this through the retreat. Satipatthana can be translated as the four foundations of mindfulness, or the four domains of mindfulness. And here it refers to what we are mindful of. And these four domains are body, feeling, heart, mind, and phenomena. The first one is body. This is not an accident. The Buddha's approach to meditation is very physical. We tend to think of meditation as something spiritual, but for the Buddha it's very much physical. We do it with the body. And the body is the foundation for the whole practice. This is why we spend so much time doing exercises, working on posture. This is all part of the first foundation of mindfulness. Becoming intimate with the experience of the body is absolutely central to the practice. When the Buddha talks about this as a practice, one of the ways he talks about it is as the contemplation of the elements. These are the dhatu. The idea behind this is that normally we live in our thoughts. There is this world that is created by our thinking, and that's the world that we live in, and that's the world that we think is real. But the Buddha is suggesting that actually it's not real at all. It's like a very good drama on the TV, and it's real as a drama, but it has no fundamental reality. Basically, it's just a drama that we have created in the mind. If we are to see through this drama and to understand what's going on, we begin with our relationship to the body. We think that the body is a certain way. The way that we relate to the body in ordinary everyday life is the way we conceptualize our body, the way we think about our body. It's not the way we directly experience it. So when we practice meditation, the first thing we're asked to do is to directly experience the nature of the body. What it really is, not as we think about it, but as we experience it. We'll do a small meditation experiment just to get a sense of what this is about. I'd like to begin with a question. How many fingers do you have on your left hand? Don't look. Just tell me. How many fingers do you have on your left hand? 4.
One thumb.
Let's use the word finger in its most general sense. We'll include the thumb. How many fingers do we have on the left hand? 5. Would everybody agree that 5 is the obvious answer? There wouldn't be any debate about this unless you had some accident. But apart from that, it's pretty obvious that there's 5 fingers on the left hand. Okay, let's do a meditation experiment. If you could get into your meditation posture. And have your left hand just resting on the leg. Close your eyes. Bring your attention to the body, experiencing the whole body. And from there, bring your attention to your left hand. Really start to focus in on your left hand and feel it. Keep your awareness on your left hand. Be mindful of your left hand. So, how many of you found 5 separate and distinct fingers? You found? Thinking is not good enough. We're talking thinking. That's right. I think there's 5 fingers, so there must be 5 fingers. This is... Did you directly experience 5? Thinking so. Not good enough. What we're trying to do is get away from the thinking world to the directly experienced world. And one of the symptoms that you've hit that directly experienced world is confidence. If I experience it, I experience it. This is a very important principle for this practice. What we're relying upon here when we do a meditation practice is our own experience. What does my experience tell me? And for this we need faith. And I'm not talking about faith in the Buddha, although that definitely helps. I'm talking about faith in my own experience. When I did my training in Burma, the way the Sayadaws dealt with this is if you gave a report which was significant, that told them that something interesting was happening, the initial response would be something like, "You never experienced that. You're just imagining it. Why are you coming in here and telling me stuff that hasn't even happened?" And scold. And if you go, oh, Sayadaw, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake, then hopeless. But if you say, Sayadaw, with all due respect, this is what I experienced, and I know what I experienced, then they'll big smile, congratulations. One of the characteristics of a direct encounter, a direct experience, is this sense of confidence. And it's really important that we have faith in our own experience. So, how many of you can say with complete confidence you directly experienced 5 fingers? Yeah, good. Yep. How many directly experienced 4? No one? How many directly experienced 3 fingers? How many directly experienced 2 fingers? We've got some hands coming up now. So I take it the rest of you found 1 finger. Or no fingers? Huh? Blob. You found a blob. How many? No. Very good. Yeah. Just part. Part of what? There's no difference. So no separation between one part of the body and another part of the body. It's just body. Yeah. And another person said sensation. When we live in the world of concept, of thought, there are certain things which are completely obvious. Of course I've got 5 fingers. But when we move to the world of direct experience, it's a different world. I haven't got 5 fingers, I have a blob. Or I haven't even got a blob, it's just body. Or it's just sensation. Now, this second world, the world, we could say, beneath the level of thought, this is the world of what the Buddha calls the elements, the dhatus. And this is the world that we need to experience, to explore, as we do a meditation practice. And it's the world which begins to become apparent when we really start to pay attention to what's going on, and we don't think we know what's going on. We forget about what we think we know, and we just focus on what we actually experience. Now, when the Buddha talks about this, with the body, the direct experience of the body, he breaks it down into 4 elements that he calls the Mahabhuta. Mahabhuta means the great becomings. Sometimes you see it translated as the great appearances. But the 4 great things that have become, that have arisen in the physical realm. And these are earth element, fire element, water element, and air element. So the 4 elements of earth, air, fire, and water. They're called elements because they're elemental aspects of experience. If I start to examine my experience, it starts to break down into these elements, and it does not break down any further. What I start with, I think I've got fingers, but what I discover is I've got a whole series of elemental sensations when I really start to pay attention. Earth element is the experience of resistance, from soft through to hard. Air element is the experience of movement in all of its forms: pressure, vibration, expansion, contraction, lift, support, and so on. So for example, let's say I have my hand here and I bring it down. Now I can feel hardness in what I think is my hand. I can feel movement. The movement is predominant over the hardness until I start to feel softness. There's a resistance. I can't go any further. I keep pressing and the softness turns into hardness. So at first there's earth and air, but air is predominant. But when I hit what I think is the table, suddenly earth element becomes much stronger. And the more I press, the stronger it becomes. So you can see it's a different way of looking at experience. Fire element is the experience of temperature, from cold through to hot. Here people have been talking about, I can't sleep because of the fire element. It's too hot. Fire element is very strong here. At the moment, air element, if you're under the fan, you're getting air element, but you're also getting fire element. It's cooler under the fan. The coolness is part of fire element. Water element is the most obscure, the most difficult to pick up. It's the experience of liquidity and cohesion. So liquidity is wetness, dryness. And cohesion is stickiness, slipperiness. Things either stick together or they don't. They fall apart. You notice how if the ground is wet, it's easy to slip. So that wetness and cohesion go together. So what I like to do is to go through a quick tour of the four great appearances as a meditation experiment. So we'll do a guided meditation. I'll ask you to direct your awareness to certain aspects of experience. Please treat these as a game. Just play with them. Don't take them too seriously. And there's no such thing as a wrong answer. What you experience is what you experience. That's all. Okay? So if you get into your meditation posture, and begin by being aware of the whole posture. Experiencing the whole posture. And now turn your awareness to all those parts of the body where you feel hardness. Where do you find hardness? You might start at the base of the body, where you make contact with the cushion, the chair, the ground. But don't be only there. Look throughout the whole body. Where do you find hardness? Look for it, and if you can find it, focus in on it and name it. Hard. Hard. And now, turn your awareness to those parts of the body where you find softness. Where can you find softness? Look for it. And if you can find it, focus in on it and name it. Soft. Soft. Now open your awareness again to the whole body, experiencing the whole body. And then turn your attention to those parts of the body where you feel heat or warmth. Where can you find heat, warmth? Look for it, and if you can find it, focus in on it and name it. Hot, warm. And now focus in on those parts of the body where you feel cold or coolness. Where can you find cold or coolness? Look for it, and if you can find it, name it. Cold, cool. And now open your awareness up again to the whole body, experiencing the whole body. And from there, turn your attention to those parts of the body where you find wetness. Where can you find wetness? Look for it, and if you find it, focus in on it and name it. Wet, wet. And now focus in on those parts of the body where you feel dryness. Can you find dryness? Look for it, and if you can find it, focus in on it and name it. Dry, dry. Now open up to the whole body again, experiencing the whole body. And from there, turn your attention to those parts of the body where you feel movement. Where can you find movement? Look for it, and if you can find it, focus in on it and name it. Movement, movement. And now open your awareness up to the whole body, experiencing the whole body, and open up to all of the elements as they move throughout the body. Don't focus in on any particular experience. but just rest your awareness on the whole package of all the elements doing their dance. Don't focus, just open. Experience all of the elements. Okay, so that was a quick look at the four elements. Of those four, which one was most obvious to you? Which was the easiest to find and to stay with? Which one? Earth. Hardness. Uh-huh. Was it hot? Was it cold? Yeah. Was that movement? You're saying earth was quite obvious, the hardness, but you're also feeling a lot of fire element, heat, particularly in the hands, and also today you've been feeling movements shifting, the body moving, air element. Anyone else? What was the easiest? How many people would say earth was the easiest? How many would say air? Or maybe one, maybe the other? What about fire? Was that the most obvious for a few people? Yeah, some people. What about water? How many people found water the most obvious?
Is it what goes into the body? Is it water?
Sorry?
Is the movement of...
No, movement is air.
Even inside the body?
Oh yeah, inside, outside, doesn't make any difference. Movement is air element. But water flows, that's why you've thought of water. No, movement is air. You found it in the runny nose. You found a sense of wetness. Did you find dryness as well as wetness? In the hides, yeah.
Inside the eyes is wet, inside the eyes is dry.
Inside the eyes is wet, outside the eyes is dry.
The skin is dry.
Skin is dry. Yeah. Most people find the water to be the most obscure. It's like you don't find it very many places. Some people find it difficult to discover it at all. Probably most meditators, when I do this, find earth and air the most obvious. when you look at the meditation methods that are popular, let's say Mahasi method, primary object when you sit, rising and falling of the abdomen. What's that? Air element. If the body starts to hurt, focus in on the pain. What are you likely to find there? Earth element. When you walk, notice the contact of the foot on the ground. Earth element. When you walk, focus on the movement of the body. Air element. When you start to look at what the meditation object is, in the physical realm, it comes down to the four elements, but the two which are most often relied upon are air element, earth element. What you also find, and meditators already have been talking about this, is that when you start to meditate, the elements really come out and be very obvious. So people will talk about how I get a lot of heat in the body, or sometimes the body is cold, or sometimes I get these strange movements, or I feel like I'm tilting over to one side, or the body feels heavy, or the body feels light, or I start to cry. There's no emotion, but I start to cry. Or I get a lot of saliva, I have to swallow. All of these experiences are the elements. And it's like once we start to pay attention to the body, this whole realm of the elements starts to come up and starts to present itself. And of course, this is a world beneath our ordinary, mapped out, conventional world of thought. So the body is doing things that we don't expect it to do. And so meditators start to get alarmed. But what's happening is they're getting in touch with this realm of the elements. And it's in this world that things really happen. So if funny things happen in the body, just accept it as this is what's supposed to happen. This is progress. Now you notice also that in these exercises we did basically two things. One is we zeroed in on a particular something. So look for hardness. Look for wetness. So you search through the body for a particular experience, find it, stay with it, and name it. Now the naming, in this kind of focusing in aspect of the practice, this is all about accuracy. Can I pinpoint the experience? Can I focus in on just one aspect of experience and stay with it? And the naming helps. The naming is about aim and accuracy. So if I want to be accurate in my awareness, it helps to name the experience. The name is like a finger pointing to what I'm looking at. When people don't like the naming, often it's because the reason is because the awareness is going to the name and not to the thing being named. If you find that's happening, drop the naming. It's getting in the way. This is quite common in the walking. But the naming can be useful for developing accuracy and precision. Now the other thing that we did was open up to the whole body. And this is more the open awareness approach. You create a big field for the awareness, and whatever happens within that field, you just let it happen. So we did that in particular at the end when we said open up to all the elements. How many people found that satisfactory? That's what you do, isn't it? That's your style. Whereas focusing in is not your style. How did you find the focusing in, doing this exercise?
What you mean, I can focus.
Did you feel it very tight or controlled?
Need a bit of attention.
Tension.
Need a bit of attention and concentration. Need a bit of it. Have to go
Yeah.
to the point. Open awareness is more relaxed.
The comment here is open awareness is more relaxing. The other thing about open awareness is that it can be more difficult to maintain because there's no specific thing for the awareness to hook onto, so it's easy to drift off. Be very careful when you do open awareness that you're not just drifting and dreaming. If you have something very specific to focus in on, it keeps you connected, it keeps you grounded. There's basically two ways that you can work with the attention. One is focus in on just one specific aspect. The other is open up to the whole package. Sometimes it's best to do one, sometimes it's best to do the other. They both have advantages and disadvantages. Some people are naturally inclined towards one and not the other. These are things that you discover as you meditate. What's the most natural way for you to practice? And what is the way of practice that is best for you? What is the way of practice that sends you to sleep, that is not good for you? So these are all things that you need to find out. A brief note on the word vipassana, which gets translated as insight. Vipassana is a compound word. You have passana, which means seeing, and the prefix vi, which denotes separation, variation. So vipassana is seeing separately, seeing distinctly, seeing from different angles in different ways. If we want to practice vipassana, it's very helpful to learn to look at things in different ways. Sometimes I go in close, sometimes I pull out, sometimes I'm very detailed, sometimes I'm very broad, sometimes there's a lot of energy, sometimes there's very little energy, one way, the other way. And this helps to stimulate insight. The basic message from today's exercises is be more precise. Don't take your meditation object for granted. Don't be lost in what you think it is. But look closely what is the actual experience. Drop the thoughts about the experience and just focus on the actual experience. Any questions or comments? Yeah.
When you name like hardness, do you say
Yeah, this is a good question. The question is, if you're working with earth element, hardness, do you name it as earth or do you name it as hardness? You name it as hardness. Earth is just another concept. It's a concept which is closer to what's going on than my hand, but it's still a concept. So when you use a name is always a concept, but you want a name which is as close to the actual experience as you can get. So don't use any theoretical names, but keep them very practical and as close to the actual experience as you can find. And you can be creative with the names. So, for example, sometimes you'd be having an experience and you don't know what it is. So you might name it, don't know. That's a good name. It doesn't matter what the name is. What matters is that the name connects you with the experience. Yeah. No, the primary object remains the same, but in the primary object you can find the elements. If other parts of the body become apparent, you go to that. Again, it's the basic structure, primary object, secondary object. So the primary object is your central reference point. It's what you do when nothing else is happening. But if something comes to you and takes you away from the primary object, that's your secondary object. Once you become sensitive to the elements, you find that you will discover them in different parts of the body. So don't be too, when we talk about the rising and falling of the abdomen, don't think that you have to stay in a tight geographical location. Abdomen is a concept. It's an idea. You start there, but once you find that movement, it will move around. You may find it here first, but later on you may find it here, or here, or here. So you just follow it. You don't worry about where it is. We have this basic structure, primary object, secondary object, that we talked about yesterday. As the practice matures, that distinction falls away. And it's just what is happening. So the primary object, secondary object distinction, Mahasi developed for beginners. When he talks about what is insight meditation, he says insight meditation is noting, in other words, being deliberately aware of whatever arises at any of the 6 sense doors as it arises. You start with a definite structure, primary object, secondary object, back to the primary object. But as that develops, all of that falls away and you just have what is happening. The practice will become more formless as you get deeper into it. Does that make sense?
Can have more than one secondary object?
You mean at one time? Simultaneously? Yeah, you can. So the question is, can you have more than one secondary object simultaneously? Yes. Definitely.
And how long do you remain on the secondary object?
How long do we remain on the secondary object? This is one of the most common questions that turn up. The difficult answer is there's no right answer. Basically, you stay with it as long as it holds your attention. One way of looking at it is the primary object is what I choose. I choose my primary object. I'll sit down and I'll follow rising and falling of the abdomen. The secondary object chooses me. I have no control over it. I don't sit down thinking I'm going to spend the next 45 minutes contemplating the pain in my left knee. But the pain in the left knee comes. It takes me. I have to stay with it. So I'll stay with it as long as it's holding my attention. But at some point it will let go of my attention. Now it may let go because it just disappears. So sometimes I'm noting a secondary object and it just disappears. Sometimes it lets go because although it's still there, it's not really holding me anymore. Like a thought. So I might be following the rising and falling of the abdomen, and in the background there's some thinking. Then suddenly I realise that instead of the rising and falling in the foreground and the thought in the background, it's gone tuk, and the thinking is now in the foreground, and the rising and falling is either back here or it's disappeared completely. So then the thinking becomes my primary object, or my secondary object. Now at some point the rising and falling comes back again. I go back to my primary object. The thinking is in the background. It's not holding me anymore. Does that make sense? You get a sense of what feels natural. So what is significant now? That's what I should be working with. And if there's nothing in particular, you go back to the primary object. The primary object is your kind of ordinary, everyday meditation object. But when something else is happening, that's my secondary object. When it's no longer holding me, back to the primary. It might be for a second, it might be for a minute, it might be for an hour, a day, a week, a year. There's no set time. Of course, if the secondary object stays around much longer, it actually becomes my primary object. Let's say some people might have chronic pain in the body. The body always hurts. So for them, pain would become the primary object. And the rising and falling would be the secondary object. Okay, I think we've run out of time. Just continue the practice as before, but what I hope you take from these exercises is a sense of precision. Be more precise with the awareness. In the early stages of the retreat, of course, we're quite tired and we're still in the process of waking up. So this precision will become more natural as time progresses, as you get more awake. But where you can, be more precise. Sometimes you can't, you pull back and you be much more general with the awareness. But when you can, go in and be more precise.